Snow and ice bottled up Atlanta and put the Southeast RFC a day behind on our water resources outlook. Jeff and I will be going over the state of our rivers and what to expect in the coming weeks and months in the January 30th edition of the Water Resources Outlook.
Okay, let's take a look at the past precipitation, and we look first at the past 30 days and see that we actually have been below normal across most of the western area river basins in the region, with deficits in the orange color there, meaning deficits more than 2 inches. Other areas showing amounts near normal with above normal amounts there across the northern peninsula of Florida. Going back 90 days, now we see many areas running above normal from central Alabama to North Georgia up through the upstate portions of the Carolinas, as well as the northern sections of the Florida peninsula. But notice as well that little dry area in the upper Tombigbee River there in northwestern Alabama. And now with the recent snow event here in the southeast, let's take a look at the snow depths from the storm currently. The current snow depths as well as the snow water equivalents. This graph shows the snow depths indicating mainly less than 2 inches across most of the southeast in that light gray color, with the light blue indicating 2 to 4 inches. But the heaviest snow, it actually fell there across the coastal regions of North Carolina, where 6 to 7 inches fell in those areas. This snow probably will provide little hydrologic impact. As you can see, snow water equivalents are mainly less than 2/10 there in North Georgia and the upper Chattahoochee Basin, as well as around 1/10 or less in the headwater rivers of the Carolinas. But the largest snow water equivalents there are in the coastal North Carolina region, where some observations in the lower Cape Fear and the lower Roanoke are indicating more than 1/4 inch snow water equivalent at this time. So how has this all affected stream flows? I'll pass it on to Todd.
Thanks, Jeff. And now we'll look at how the rainfall has impacted our stream flows. And you can see especially in the western part of our area, where the rainfall hasn't been as high, these are instantaneous readings, not over the whole month, but just right now where we are. And you can see over the Tombigbee Basin and in northern Alabama that in many places we're below normal, in some cases much below normal. As we push a little further east, we can see more normal type conditions. As we push all the way up into the Carolinas, now even in the Carolinas, we have a few spots that are below normal for this time of year. Again, remember, this is an instantaneous value, and we look over the last 28 days. Now, this was what we showed at the beginning of January and where we were then, and we saw a little bit of the top of the Tombigbee being slightly below normal at that time. The rest of the area was either near normal or above normal until you got down into Florida in the St. Johns Basin and in central Florida. But currently, everything's kind of changing a little bit. In South Alabama and southern Mississippi, things are looking a little bit less normal for this time of year. And again, this is the 28-day average. So we look across the rest of the southeast, and it isn't as wet as it was at that time, and that's because really we haven't seen nearly as much rain. The St. Johns Basin in Florida is still below normal because, again, we haven't seen much rain in that area. So things are kind of becoming a little bit more normal for this time of year, and the dryness has helped in some of that. We still have to be very careful as we go forward with high rainfalls, because our grounds are still saturated and the potential is there for flooding. So the drought monitor is going to it's changing just a little bit in that we're starting to see some abnormally dry conditions in a couple of different spots, especially in northern Alabama, and as we go down the Alabama line, even into South Alabama right now. Again, it's just abnormally dry. We typically don't go into a drought during winter just because our rivers tend to get plenty of water. But for right now, we're just abnormally dry in a couple of spots, and we'll be watching as we get to the end of the winter time and early spring to see if this starts to spread or if it starts to get worse as far as the drought goes.
Looking at the weather patterns here in the southeast after our big winter event here, that storm system is long gone and high pressure settles in. And by Sunday, that high slides east and return moist flow spreads across the southeast ahead of our next storm system. but this one will not include frozen precipitation, but rather lighter rain across the region. But by the middle of next week, we'll see a more rigorous spring-like system, bringing the possibility of convective rains, which could pose a threat of flooding, and we'll keep an eye on this as we go into next week.
So Jeff took us through our short term, and I'll take us through our long term. Here's the ENSO prediction, and right now it looks like we're going to stay in neutral conditions with warming of the Pacific Ocean into possibly a mild El Nino as we get into late summer. We'll have to watch that and see whether that pans out, but right now it probably won't have much of an impact on either our hurricane season or our winter season next year right now, just because it looks so mild right now. But we'll see how that goes. Now, last Water Resources Outlook, we looked at the Arctic Oscillation, and this is what I showed you with it looked like a negative conditions. Now, negative conditions meant we would have colder weather and so forth. Well, now this one that we're looking at looks like we did go negative during that time. We have seen the cold air move down. We've had snow. We've had a lot of different things come through the southeast, and now it looks like it's going to become a little bit on the positive side. Now, with the positive side, we see on the left-hand side, the graphic shows that the cold air tends to stay to the north then, and we tend to have more active storms. We tend to have a more active weather pattern. So it looks like it's possible that we're going to, as Jeff mentioned before, in the second week we might have a little bit more active weather pattern. Well, we may actually see a little bit more spring-like weather as we get even past the 2 weeks. So now when we look out to the month of February, it looks like a continuation of where we've been. At the beginning of January, we saw wet weather, and as we moved through January, we really kind of dried out through the second half of the month. And so overall, we saw kind of a dry month. And they're looking kind of for the same thing. Even though we did see a little bit of more active weather possible early in the month, they're still showing some below normal precipitation. So I'm hoping we're going to see at least normal precipitation during that time. We really wouldn't want to start to fall into a drought this early. Hopefully we'll continue to have at least normal rainfall, keep things interesting. Now, from a neutral ENSO analog, in other words, what we've looked at in the past, when we have a neutral ENSO, this is kind of what we expect over much of the southeast, and for the most part it's equal chances for above, near normal, below normal. But you can notice a few spots where it's above normal, like in the South Alabama area, all kind of along the Gulf Coast a little bit in Alabama and Georgia, where it's a little bit more above normal and near normal, and less the below normal. Otherwise, you get into Florida, there's equal chances through there. We get up into North Carolina and South Carolina, and our near normal, which is the yellow part, is a little bit higher. So this is our February analogs for a neutral ENSO. Our 3-month outlook, now this is February through April, still shows us below normal for most of the southeast. However, if you notice, we've talked about it in the past, this is kind of a La Nina pattern, or very close to. A lot of times during a La Nina, we'll see it dry in the southeast for the most part, and then in the Ohio Valley, we have wet and a very tight gradient between the wet and the dry. Well, in this case, it's a little bit more in the Tennessee Valley and over to Arkansas and Missouri, but there's still some wetness and some dry in there. With neutral ENSO conditions, as we just showed before, especially in February, that's not what we really see. And for our March neutral ENSO analogs, again, we look and it's pretty much equal chances for the most part, where we expect just normal rainfall during that time, nothing unusual. We'll start to hope maybe next year if we get into El Nino, that a little bit more. And the May through July, right now, based on the models, there's no clear-cut kind of leaning one way above normal or below normal precipitation. We're just looking for equal chances as we begin our summer. So our bottom line in the short term, looks like it's not going to be so cold. Looks like that Arctic air should stay a little bit further north, but a more active rainfall pattern. At least we'll see fronts coming through. How much rain they have associated with them is still hard to see, but it does look to be more active. As for the long term, we continue, at least through the spring, to show below normal rainfall in parts of the southeast as a continuation of what's happened in January. So we'll watch that and see if that continues in the way it was. And our next water resources outlook, barring any bad weather, should be on February 19th. We'll look forward to talking to you then. thank you for listening to this Water Resources Outlook. Please remind your friends and colleagues that they can sign up for the Water Resources Outlook, the Southeast RFC Journal, and other valuable products at our website. Also, you can find us now on Facebook. Look for our next update in about 2 to 3 weeks.